All right, so let's go over what you've just received buying our Duraline water softener. You will get it shipped in 2 boxes. The large one there on the left is the brine tank, the salt tank. And I put the box on top there. That's the valve. That is actually shipped inside the salt tank there. So that'll be in there with the lid and the brine hose connections and things. The taller box is the mineral tank, the scuba looking tank, and it is already preloaded with the resin in the tank for you with that upgraded 10% resin. Okay, so after you get the tanks out of the boxes here, the mineral tank there, it's got a cap just to hold the resin in there because it's preloaded with the resin already in there, either the upgraded 10% resin or the upgraded fine mesh resin, depending on which one you got. And then of course it's got the salt tank or the brine tank. Take the lid off there, you have the brine well, there's a safety float in that tube there, and the overflow elbow. Inside the valve box, you'll have a few things. You'll have, that's inside the valve box here, the manual for the Duraline valve. Of course, you'll have the valve here, which actually comes with a nice little cover here, just a Phillips head screw on each side there to see the face of the valve for the programming, the time and everything. You will also have this upper basket, which you may or may not choose to use. And we'll talk about that later, of course. You'll get a couple little baggies here. This one has some brine line controls here, brine line fittings here. This screen here, which we'll mention later too, you do not need that. There's a screen internally that backwashes with the unit, so you can throw that one away. But then you'll have this little brass, the brine line stabilizer and a ferrule fitting here. And we're gonna explain to you how that obviously works. This other baggie here is an option. It's if you want to hard pipe in your drain line, it's female threaded here. If you want to hard pipe that in, that's you can use that instead of what is already on the valve here, which is just a drain barb here. So you have a couple options there for the drains. If you hard pipe, it's probably easier to use the female threaded. Those are just quick connects with the with a little pin here, or this this clip there. So we'll obviously discuss that later. You will also, in the brine tank when it's shipped, you have the brine line tubing here. It's 3/8 inch diameter, the outer diameter. So you'll have that. You will also have the upgraded stainless steel bypass here. You'll have that shipped in there as well, which of course is held on by the clips. We'll show how that goes. It's female threaded there for you at 3/4 inch or 1 inch, whichever one you ordered. A couple options here. So you're either going to use the upper basket if you want to, or some of you may have chose to buy the KDF 55 or KDF 85 media guard. So if you have this item, then you will not use the upper basket for sure. So you use either one of those items there. So that all comes with the unit, that Duraline valve there. Some things you'll need in order to do the installation. You will need some sort of lubrication that is made for that, for potable water. We recommend like cooking oil or something like that. You'll need a couple hand tools like pliers, a couple screwdrivers, and a wrench of some sort. And then of course, you'll also have some more tubing here that you will need to purchase. It's just 1/2 inch ID, so 1/2 inch inner diameter for the drain line. Everybody's drains are different, so can never send the right amount. So just pick some of that up. 1/2 inch ID. We recommend like a flexible hose with a hose clamp. That does just great on the drain barb there. If you hard pipe it, then of course you're going to use the female threaded probably on the drain barb. So those are what you'll need to have yourself. So a couple hand tools, and that is everything that comes with the unit. And we will get to the installation here in a bit. All right, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and install the bypass. So at the back of the valve here, this is your meter that's measuring the water for you, and you're gonna have your stainless steel bypass. You'll see one side has the O-rings sealed, the other is female threaded. The first thing we're gonna do is use some appropriate lubrication here for you. Like cooking oil would be recommended, but you wanna make sure you lube up those O-rings. There's 2 of them there, and then you'll see the O-ring side of these You're gonna just fit directly on there. You may need to loosen these clips. There's a clip here on either side. You may wanna loosen those up to be able to fit it on, then you just snug those up. And when I say snug, we mean just tight. Don't over tighten. You can end up causing a crack here. So do not over tighten those, very important. Do not over tighten the screws, just enough to hold it there. The O-ring seal will hold the water back. All right, before we attach the valve onto the tank, we're gonna install either the upper basket or the KDF 55 or KDF 85 media guard. On the bottom of the valve, you'll see they just attach here, quarter turn, just a small turn there with either one. Of course, the KDF media guard, the big end, not the small end O-ring there. So the big end would go on the bottom of the valve. And again, some of you ordered the KDF 55 or KDF 85 media guard. Those of you that ordered the Iron Blaster, that does come with the KDF 85 media guard. So before we install the valve on top of the tank, you'll notice the cap on here. Just take that cap off, unscrew it, and you'll see the riser tube here. And everybody's already gotten the resin loaded in the tank for you already. And you're just gonna hand tighten the valve onto the tank, making sure the riser tube is in the center here. And so that goes up inside the valve before you hand tighten the valve onto the tank. We're gonna hand tighten the valve onto the tank here. Do not use Teflon tape, pipe dope, or anything like that. The O-ring, it's an O-ring seal there. The O-ring will hold the water back. And then you're gonna hand tighten that valve onto the tank. Tighten it just like a 2-year-old would tighten it. Just snug it up there. If you over tighten it, you'll crack the threads here, you'll crack something there and it'll cause a leak. Maybe not even right away, but later on down the road. So just hand tighten it, just like a 2-year-old would hand tighten it. Don't crank on the bypass or anything like that. Just nice and easy. The O-ring seal will hold the water back. All right, now it's time to connect our main plumbing lines. You'll see, first of all, we kept the bypass in bypass mode, you can tell there. We recommend the flexible lines, just make it a little bit easier going from different heights, replacing one softener with the next. You'll also want to pay very close attention to the arrows that are on the bypass here. As you see, this arrow is going in, so this side is obviously the water supply coming into the softener. This arrow here is pointing out. So when you're facing the front of the valve here, the right side is the in, the left side is the out. When you're replacing one softener with another, it's easy just to assume the softener's supply in and out is the same as one, but it's not always true. So follow the bypass here with the water coming in and the water going out. And we use the flexible lines. The bypass is female threaded, so we would just tighten those on there using just 1 or 2 wraps of pipe tape on those, and just snug those up, tighten those up. If you get a drip at first here, we recommend that you just undo those, put fresh pipe tape on there and connect it again, and you'll be able to get that, and it'll help hold that water back there. We are now going to show you how to connect the brine tank, the salt tank, to the softener valve. On the softener side of this, you have these brass fittings. Just go ahead and untighten that brass compression nut there. And it's threaded there, you see. And that one package that has these 3 fittings in there, you got the brine line stabilizer, the ferrule fitting, and then the screen. Again, that screen, we just tell you to throw that away there. You don't need it. There's a screen internally that gets backwashed with a unit, so you do not need that. And then we will show you how this goes on the brine line. So this is the order that you put on. You put the compression nut on first, then you put the ferrule fitting. Notice how it's tapered. The taper is going to point to the valve, the narrow portion, and then you have the brine line stabilizer, that brass piece that goes in the end there. And you're just going to put it up into the valve that way and just tighten that compression fitting on like so. So getting ready to connect the salt tank to the mineral tank, the valve, Inside here is where is the brine well with the safety float, baggie with the cap for on top of the well once we get it installed, and also an overflow elbow. We'll walk you through all of that. It's also where the lid and the brine line is, so that's where that is. And we will show you how to connect the brine well. You'll see there's 3 holes on the other side here. This one you'll see is where the brine line is going to be connected to once we get the safety float installed there. This is where there's a plastic nut that holds that on there. We'll show that all to you. Then the overflow elbow just goes here, and we will show you how that goes right now. So we've connected the brine well with the safety float. We've connected it. As you see here, this is just a plastic nut, so just don't over tighten that. Use your hands probably. And then there's the overflow elbow. If you got a floor drain nearby, that's convenient. You could do that. Most of our customers don't even use that. And then the brine line is just a push fitting on this fitting here. So you just push it in, you make sure it's in there snug, and that is how that is done. Next is to install the drain line. The drain barb that it comes with is on the back here. And remember, you can switch it out for this female threaded quick connect here for if you want to hard pipe it in. So you can use that female threaded there. We're going to show it using just the drain barb. Recommend like a flexible poly hose with a hose clamp of some sort. You're just going to install that directly onto the drain barb and tighten it down. You're going to run that drain line to a drain that's at least 1.5 inches in diameter. It needs to be a free-flowing drain. Again, at least 1.5 inches in diameter. You want to have an air gap there, so make sure that you have that drain line. Again, 1.5 inches in diameter, free-flowing drain with an air gap, and it will come out under pressure to that drain line, so make sure you're prepared for that. And that's how you run that drain line. All right, now that we have our valve, all the main water supply coming in, water supply going out, we have the brine line connected to the salt tank, we have the drain line connected to our free-flowing drain there, 1.5 inches in diameter. Now you'll probably want to turn on your main water supply. You want to have your bypass and bypass mode still. Turn on your main water supply, run a tap beyond that just in case your well kicked up anything or anything your pipes got there. Run a tap, make sure it's clear, and then after you get that done, go ahead and you're going to turn the bypass from bypass mode to service by grabbing the handle and just turn it slowly open as to not get a burst of water into the softener. So over the course of 5-7 seconds or whatever, and move it to the service mode where it's in line with your plumbing, and that'll do that. Now again, you'll want to run that tap beyond it, as there could be some dust or whatever inside the softener, so just run that tap until it's clear, and you are now in business. So after you do that, then we want to go ahead and add 1 to 2 gallons, no more than 2 gallons of water into the salt tank. And now we can also plug it in. It plugs in to a normal 110 outlet, 110 volt outlet, and now it is set up and ready to go. After that, to get to the programming, you'll see these 2 screws. There's one here and one on the other side. It's just a Phillips head. I believe it's a #1 Phillips head. You'll want to take those screws off to get into where you can see the face with the dials with the program, and we're going to walk you through that next. All right, so you take the cover off, and you'll see a few things here. The big blue dial in the middle. We'll talk about that in a second with the in-service. Time of day, and this other dial here, and this white pin. To set the time of day, it's pretty easy. You just push this white pin in, you just depress that white pin, and the back dial now will spin freely. You'll see the time of day just change there. So let's just say it's 3:30 right now, so we'll set that to about 3:30. As long as that time of day is set correctly. On the days it regenerates, it's still metered, so it's measuring the water regenerate as needed, but it will regenerate at 2 o'clock in the morning for you as long as that time of day is set correctly. Now let's talk about the programming a little bit. It can be confusing with all these little numbers in here with the hardness setting and the people dial. We feel like it's much more easy just to adjust that using some math here. So this unit is, let's pretend this unit is a 64,000 grain softener. Well, you're going to take that 64,000 grain, divide it by your hardness. The hardness is in grains per gallon. So let's just say your grains per gallon is 20, and then let's say you have 1 part per million of iron. You would add 5 to the hardness for every part per million of iron you have. So 1 part per million of iron equals 5 hardness, so 20, and then the 25. What you do is you just divide the 64,000 grain by 25 and multiply that by 0.85. And that'll give you a number and probably hundreds of gallons. And that's what these numbers stand for. Like the 10 is 1,000 gallons, the 8 is 800 gallons, the 20 is 2,000 gallons. Anyway, you'll get that number of gallons between backwash using that formula. Again, it's the size unit, so a 64,000 grain, a 32,000 grain, a 48,000 grain, whatever it is. Divide that by your hardness and iron combination, of course, and divide that number, and then multiply by 0.85 to build in a little reserve there. Make sure you don't run out of soft water throughout the day. And then that'll give you that hundreds of gallons. And then you want to line up that white dot with the corresponding number here. So let's just say you came out with about 1,500 gallons between backwash. In order to do that, you just pull out on that white clear dial, and then you rotate it to where it lines up the 15 with that white dot. And you can see that's what I've done here. The 15 is lined up with that white dot. It doesn't matter where that white dot is. It could be anywhere. Just line that 15 up with that white dot, and that would be 1,500 gallons of soft water, and then it would regenerate that night. So that's how you program the unit. After you get it programmed, so everything is set up, the water supply is in and out, and the water is now flowing into the softener here and into the resin tank. You can add at least 1 bag of salt. Now that we have water in the salt tank, add at least 1 bag of salt in there. And then what we want to do is just a manual regeneration. So the way that works is you're going to turn this big blue handle here into where it says regen. You need to go 1 spot past that until you see rinse, and that's starting the manual regeneration. You'll hear water going out to the drain and all that. The whole process will take about an hour and a half. We ask you to do this manual regeneration just to make sure there's no leaks on your brine line fittings and your drain line and all the supply, all of your attachments there. Just make sure there's no drips or leaks or anything like that. But that's how you do a manual regeneration. Like I said, it takes about an hour and a half. And as that regeneration goes, this knob will turn, and when it comes back here, it'll all be ready to go for that 1,500 gallons or wherever you have that programmed, and then it will regenerate as needed. Now that you have your water softener completely installed, you've done a manual regeneration, no leaks or anything like that in your connections, put the cover back on. Of course, it's programmed already. Put the cover back on with those 2 small Phillips head screws there, 1 on each side. Just a couple closing thoughts here. We want you to keep at least 1 bag of salt in the bottom of the salt tank here. At least 1 bag. Other than that, you can fill it all the way up if you'd like. Customer preference there. But keep at least 1 bag of salt in the bottom of that salt tank. Secondly, the resin does come slightly pre-charged. It could take up to a couple weeks to really see the full effects of soft water throughout your whole house there with all the plumbing, and water here holds water and things like that. So up to a couple weeks before you see the full effect of the water softener. The good news is the water is now flowing through there, and it's getting more and more soft as it goes. But like I said, don't panic if day 1 you don't see full effects of the softener. It could take up to a couple weeks. And then lastly, of course, if you bought the water softener from A+ Water, we would love to help you with any installation questions, any programming questions, anything like that that you have. We want you to call us toll free at 877-477-5452. Again, if you bought your softener from A+ Water, we would love to help you with anything that you got going on. just give us a call at 877-477-5452.